Richard Belzer's body collapses lifelessly to the ground. His head thuds against the stage of the television studio. A shocked murmur rises from the audience. Towering over Belzer is the hulking star of the World Wrestling Federation, Hulk Hogan. He watches as a pool of blood forms around the host's head, staining the studio's glossy black floor a deep dark red. Hogan gives Belzer a couple of light slaps on the cheek before he regains consciousness. Just days before his big match at the inaugural WrestleMania, Hulk Hogan had almost doomed the WWF's gigantic show before its debut. Even today, Hogan remains one of the biggest stars in wrestling history. But behind the facade of the invincible crowd favorite lies an unseemly character.
He disrespected me and my family. He's a wuss.
Do I like Hulk Hogan? No, I don't. I think he's a phony piece of shit.
Sex, drugs, violence, and legal troubles. This is the dark side of Terry Bollea, the man behind the role of Hulk Hogan. At the age of 16, the American began watching wrestling. During his high school years, he particularly admired the skills of American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. He started regularly attending wrestling shows in Tampa, Florida, where his family had lived ever since he was 2 years old. Later WWF champion Billy Graham became his idol, especially due to his impressive physique. However, Hogan had a greater passion alongside his love for wrestling: music. For over 10 years, he tried his hand as a bassist in various rock bands during his school years. To find more time for music, he even dropped out of the University of South Florida. Parallel to his music career, he began building his muscles in the gym. In a short time, he made impressive progress, which did not go unnoticed by those around him. After a performance in a bar, Hogan was approached about his muscular physique and received an invitation for a trial as a wrestler. But the first training session was a shock. His trainer, Japanese wrestler Hiro Matsuda, broke his leg during their first session. Hogan had to pause for over 2 months before he could step back into the ring with Matsuda. He was challenged and tormented, but improved steadily. After a year of training, he got his first match in August 1977 at a championship wrestling from Florida show. But he quickly turned his back on the league. He simply could not get along with his domineering trainer, Matsuda. Hogan paused his in-ring career and instead entered the nightlife scene. He initially worked as a bouncer at the Anchor Club and eventually became its manager. He got along well with the club's owner, and together they opened their own gym, where Hogan continued to work on his physique. But he longed to return to the ring and got another chance. His idol from earlier years, Billy Graham, secured him a job at a wrestling league in Alabama. Hogan impressed and subsequently fought in Tennessee and Georgia. His reputation preceded him. In the fall of 1979, he managed to join the World Wrestling Federation under the leadership of Vince McMahon Sr. McMahon was quickly impressed by the young American's physique and charisma and gave him the now world-famous ring name Hulk Hogan. However, his major breakthrough in the USA did not happen immediately. Simultaneously, he made a name for himself at New Japan Pro Wrestling, defeating the future WWE Hall of Famer Antonio Inoki in 1983. In December 1983, Hogan was set for a major leap. A year earlier, a new figure had entered the wrestling world map: Vincent Kennedy McMahon. He bought the World Wrestling Federation from his father and pursued an ambitious plan. He wanted to transform the WWF from a regional territory into a nationwide attraction, choosing Hulk Hogan as his flagship. Hogan returned to the World Wrestling Federation and quickly became the league's biggest fan favorite. Just a few weeks later, he won the WWF Championship in a match against the Iron Sheik. The legend of Hulkamania and his fans, the Hulkamaniacs, was born. Hogan became the anticipated audience magnet and was slated as the main attraction for the first WrestleMania in March 1985. However, a TV appearance shortly before his big match would put a dent in his hero image. A few days before their tag team match, Hogan and actor Mr. T appeared on comedian Richard Belzer's TV show Hot Properties. As part of a nationwide media tour, the WWF stars were promoting their WrestleMania match. During the show, Belzer talked about Hogan's abilities and asked him to demonstrate his best move. But Hogan tried to pacify the overzealous comedian. "I have to stick to the basics here. The floor is quite hard and I don't want to hurt you." Instead of a throw, Hogan applied a front chokehold. Within seconds, Belzer lost consciousness. Hogan dropped the limp body to the floor. The comedian hit the back of his head hard and sustained a laceration. He quickly lay on the studio floor in a pool of his own blood. Fortunately, he regained consciousness after a few seconds and, still in shock, announced a commercial break. This incident would not go without consequences for Hogan. In the next episode of his show, Belzer replayed the clip where Hogan injured him. He repeatedly emphasized that the incident was not planned, and he had no idea what was going to happen. To demonstrate the seriousness of his injury, he showed a close-up of his laceration, which required 9 stitches at the hospital.
Made me unconscious in his arm, and then he let me go. He let me drop to the floor, and I was unconscious, went to the floor, hit the back of my head, blood gushing out.
The comedian took the matter to court and sued the wrestling star for $5 million in damages. The case eventually reached the New York Supreme Court, but both parties settled out of court before a verdict was reached. Belzer received $400,000 and Hogan avoided further negative publicity. Belzer later stated that he used the money to buy a house in France. Until Belzer's death in February 2023, the two never spoke again. WrestleMania 1 was not negatively affected by Hogan's scandal. On the contrary, the event garnered even more media attention, and Hogan remained in the spotlight of the WWF. His match alongside Mr. T was the first of 7 main events Hogan would compete in during the first 8 years of WrestleMania history. In the following years, he became an international superstar. Various shows invited him as a guest, and he graced the covers of numerous prominent magazines. After over 3 years as champion, a rivalry developed before WrestleMania 3 between Hogan and the French legend Andre the Giant. The title holder achieved the unthinkable. He lifted the Giant off his feet and slammed him onto the mat. The leg drop sealed the challenger's defeat, providing fans with one of the greatest moments in wrestling history. Hogan did not lose the WWF Championship until 1989, ironically, to his arch-rival Andre. In several high-profile rivalries with Macho Man, Randy Savage, and The Ultimate Warrior, he achieved further title victories. However, in the early 1990s, Hogan was again in the media spotlight outside the ring, while also facing internal criticism.
You know, Hogan was a great person in the ring, but we didn't like his outside activities, and thought that he wasn't a very good representation or a very good model for young people to be able to be looking up to. He didn't walk the walk.
In 1991, initial reports emerged that Hogan's personal physician, Dr. George Zahorian III, in his role as a doctor for the Pennsylvania State Athletic Commission, had illegally sold steroids to several wrestlers. This practice had been illegal since 1988. Hogan was also implicated in the process, but the World Wrestling Federation's lawyers managed to avert disaster. Hogan was slated to testify in the trial against Zahorian. However, the WWF's lawyers managed to keep Hogan out of the line of fire to protect his career and reputation. A possible testimony never occurred. Instead, the defendant's attorney made a sweeping statement on the last day. openly declaring that Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan had definitely acquired steroids from his client. For Zahorian's conviction, this statement was irrelevant. The doctor was sentenced to 3 years in prison in June 1991. Hogan came under further scrutiny and tried to clear his name during an appearance on the Arsenio Hall show. There, he stated that there had been a wave of misinformation accusing him of illegal steroid use. He firmly denied the allegations of abuse.
I've trained 20 years, 2 hours a day to look like I do. But the things that I am not is I'm not a steroid abuser, and I do not use steroids.
He also explained that he had only used steroids 3 times in his career. When he tore his bicep in 1983, his doctor prescribed a medication that acted similarly to a steroid and improved healing. Despite his appearance, the allegations of steroid use in the WWF and Hogan did not subside.
I myself personally have injected Hulk Hogan with anabolic steroids.
After WrestleMania 8 in the spring of 1992, Vince McMahon pulled the plug. Hogan did not appear in the ring for almost a year and was thus taken out of the line of fire. His return to the cameras was short-lived. Just a few months after his comeback, he left the WWF to pursue his acting career. During the same period, the league began experiencing the most challenging time in its history. In 1993, Vince McMahon was put on trial in New York. The owner of the World Wrestling Federation was accused of distributing steroids to his wrestlers and forcing them to take them, thus violating the law. 11 active or former WWF wrestlers were called to testify against McMahon. Particularly notable, Hulk Hogan was also to testify against his former employer. The superstar was already under contract with the rival WCW and had entered into an intriguing deal with the prosecution. To secure his testimony, Hogan was promised full immunity regarding his own steroid offenses. McMahon's defenders feared a vendetta from Hogan, who might seek revenge on his former boss and ruin the league with damning testimony. But Hogan surprised everyone. He admitted to using steroids himself. The medications had been sent to him by mail from his personal physician, George Zahorian, who had been imprisoned for these actions. However, he exonerated his former employer, Vince McMahon. There had never been any encouragement or coercion to use steroids.
I know what was on the line there, and the problem was that they have those Vince McMahon in jail. They should have put the whole wrestling community in jail. You know, he didn't sell them. He didn't inject people. He didn't do it. And I was glad Vince McMahon survived this. Vince didn't go to jail for 17 years because of me.
On July 23, 1994, Vincent Kennedy McMahon was acquitted. After 16 hours of deliberation, the jury finally declared him not guilty. Vince embraced his lawyers. The investigators could never prove that McMahon had encouraged his wrestlers to abuse steroids. The attempt to use Hogan as a key witness failed. Had Hogan provided damning evidence against McMahon that day, it could have meant the premature end of the World Wrestling Federation. The fact that Hogan had long denied his own use of steroids was still resented by many of his colleagues, such as the Ultimate Warrior, even many years later.
To take the kind of vitamins you take the kind of vitamins that you take, Terry, you need to have a prescription. That gimmick bag you wear around your waist that you're never without, that's where you carry all your gimmicks so you can stay high all day.
Almost 30 years after the incident, former colleague Jesse Ventura still lacks understanding of Hogan's lies.
He said he never took them. That was a lie. Common laugh used to be when he used to tell the kids to say their prayers and take their vitamins. In the dressing room, we'd always laugh and say, orals or injectables, when he'd tell them to take their vitamins, because a slang term for steroids is vitamins.
Shortly after his testimony in the steroid trial, Hogan fought for the first time in a WCW ring. Against Ric Flair, he immediately won the World Heavyweight Championship. His reign lasted over a year before he controversially lost the belt at Halloween Havoc 1995. Instead of pursuing a new title, he initially joined forces with Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. They formed the New World Order and became increasingly prominent in WCW shows. In August 1996, Hogan got a chance at a title win and seized it. This was followed by more great feuds with Sting, Randy Savage, and Ric Flair, before Hogan disappeared from WCW TV shows in October 1999. The league's new creative chief, Vince Russo, asked Hogan to take a break. He returned to the ring in February of 2000. A conflict followed, revealing Hogan's opportunistic side. At Bash at the Beach, he received a match for the World Heavyweight Championship. In the production meeting, Hogan tried to use his creative influence to secure the title for himself. Russo, however, insisted on a title retention. The two sides eventually reached a compromise, allowing Hogan to win the title. After the victory, Russo delivered a planned promo against Hogan, but went overboard. He insulted him as a piece of shit and fired him. Additionally, the public first learned about a clause in Hogan's contract. This clause allowed Hulk to veto any creative decisions regarding his character. This was to be the superstar's last appearance in WCW. Hogan felt his reputation was damaged and eventually unsuccessfully sued Russo for defamation. The lawsuit was dismissed in 2002. After a successful knee surgery, Hogan returned to the World Wrestling Federation in February 2002 for a second time, being presented as a villain in his role as leader of the New World Order. A few weeks later, he made history again. He became the last undisputed WWF champion before the league changed its name to World Wrestling Entertainment in May 2002 after a lawsuit with the World Wildlife Fund. This was followed by feuds with The Undertaker, Brock Lesnar, and even Vince McMahon himself. However, Hogan was dissatisfied. Just a year after his return, McMahon terminated his contract again. Hulk ventured to Japan again, but didn't stay long there either. In 2005, he made another comeback. On the night before WrestleMania 21, Hogan received a great honor. Along with his longtime rivals Rowdy Roddy Piper and the Iron Sheik, he was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame as an active wrestler. His longtime friend Sylvester Stallone gave the speech. Hogan's last match in a WWE ring took place at SummerSlam a year later. He defeated the young Randy Orton and left the company later that year. In 2009, he joined Total Non-Stop Action Wrestling and made his debut in January 2010, but his past caught up with him. Former colleagues like Doink the Clown and The Ultimate Warrior turned their backs on him.
I don't have any respect for him. I believe he's not a real person. I think everything's a facade.
You can't handle reality, and you are a pathological liar.
In 2012, a video was released showing Hulk Hogan having sex with the wife of radio host Bubba the Love Sponge. The sex was consensual. The three were good friends at the time. Hogan first learned about the existence of the video from the news. In an interview, he said he had no knowledge of the recording and had not given any consent. Bubba and his wife Heather, however, had burned the recording from their surveillance camera onto a DVD, which found its way into the public 5 years later. In October 2012, the news portal Gawker Media published a 2-minute clip of the nearly 30-minute video on their blog, Gawker. Hogan took legal action against the platform and filed a lawsuit for copyright infringement. He also demanded that the portal delete the clip. However, the court saw no conflict with the law in the publication and initially dismissed Hogan's lawsuit. This was followed by another lawsuit, this time for damages. Hogan demanded $100 million in damages from Gawker. He described that the publication of the video had not only caused him emotional harm, but it also damaged him through defamation and invasion of his privacy. Hogan was awarded a sum of $115 million in damages. Gawker appealed, but the negotiations for a lower sum couldn't save the media company. In June 2016, Gawker had to file for bankruptcy. A few months later, they settled out of court with Hogan for $31 million. Even after the trial, the video continued to haunt Hogan. In an interview, he addressed allegations that it was wrong to sleep with his friend's wife. At the time of the recording, Hogan was still in the process of divorcing his ex-wife Linda. The Hulkster acknowledged his mistakes.
I don't agree with any of the stuff I did. I mean, like I said, I can make a million excuses for it. I'm accountable. I did that. It's not fun to talk about. It's very embarrassing. It's not who I am. The only thing I can say is I pray to God that people can learn from my mistake, because I sure did.
Hogan returned to WWE in 2014 after an almost 8-year absence, taking on the role of host for WrestleMania 30. His slip-up, where he mistakenly referred to the Superdome in New Orleans as the Silver Dome, continues to amuse people even today.
I'd like to welcome everyone here at the Silverdome.
Hogan made another appearance at WrestleMania 31 the following year to induct his late friend Randy Savage into the WWE Hall of Fame. During the show, he had another significant moment, briefly reviving the New World Order with Kevin Nash and Scott Hall to support Sting in his match against Triple H. As Hogan, playing air guitar, strolled towards the ring with his friends, he had no idea this would be his last WWE appearance for the next few years. In July 2015, another video from 2007 featuring Hogan and the wife of Bubba the Love Sponge was released. The clip, published by the National Enquirer, showed Hogan talking to Bubba and his wife Heather after having sex with Heather. He expressed his dissatisfaction with his daughter Brooke at the time, criticizing her struggling music career despite a $3 million investment. Hogan made racist comments about her love life, suggesting that a record deal had fallen through because Brooke had slept with the owner's son. Hogan repeatedly used the N-word, saying he would prefer it if she married an 8-foot-tall, $100 million basketball player. He made several racist remarks about Brooke's then-boyfriend, rapper Stax, repeatedly using the N-word. He also stated in the video, "I guess we're all a little racist." A few days after the first video was published, a transcript of another tape surfaced. In this one, Hogan made homophobic remarks. He told Bubba and Heather about a plan to visit his childhood home for his reality show, but when describing a large man who answered the door, Hogan used several queer-phobic slurs. The reaction to the videos was swift. World Wrestling Entertainment terminated Hogan's contract, removed all references to him from their website, took him out of the Hall of Fame, and pulled his merchandise from sale. Hogan was even removed from the WWE 2K16 video game, which was still in development at the time. In a statement, WWE left no doubt they had made the right decision. WWE is committed to embracing and celebrating individuals from all backgrounds, as demonstrated by the diversity of our employees, performers, and fans worldwide. For Hogan, the video's release was a shock. In an interview with ABC News, he searched for apologetic words, explaining that he was at a low point in his life at the time of the recording, but insisted he was not a racist.
You're a racist.
No, I'm not. I'm not a racist. I never should have said what I said.
In the video, Hogan shows a side rarely seen in front of cameras, emotional, distraught, and ashamed of his words. He repeatedly asks for forgiveness from his fans, almost begging them. As he begins talking about his daughter, he struggles to find words, tears streaming down his face. Hogan becomes so emotional that he has to pause the interview briefly. Many colleagues and friends also commented on Hogan, with opinions divided. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson tried to support him. "I've known Terry for a lot of years. I had not known the man to be racist." Former boxer and longtime friend George Foreman agreed. "I do not condone the language he used, but he is no racist, he is a good guy." Hogan's ties with WWE remained severed for 3 long years. It wasn't until July 15, 2018, that the company announced Hogan would be reinstated into the Hall of Fame, citing his multiple apologies and voluntary work with young people as reasons for a second chance. Wrestlers like Mark Henry, who had previously criticized Hogan harshly, viewed his return positively.
I do feel like he genuinely wants to clear his name. He sees people that used to respect him, they look at him different, and it hurts. And he brought that on himself, but he's trying his best to, clear that up.
Hogan made his first appearance after his return at Crown Jewel in Saudi Arabia a few months later, expressing his joy at being back in WWE. A year later, Hogan received a rare honor. In December 2019, WWE announced Hogan, along with Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, and Sean Waltman, would be inducted into the Hall of Fame as part of the New World Order. This made Hogan part of an elite group of wrestlers who have been inducted into the Hall of Fame twice. But Hogan's character remains controversial. He has irreparably burned many bridges with his ego.
Him. I think he thought he was the big dog and the king dog in the company, and a guy that thought he was everything in wrestling, and that everyone else was, we were all backup players to Hulk Hogan, and that's the way he saw it.
Hulk Hogan's career is impressive. He will go down in history as one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. His work created a boom that the industry still benefits from today. He became a role model for multiple generations, inspiring many young people to emulate his physique. But Hogan also has a darker side. He showed unnecessary harshness towards a host, abused steroids, and denied their use, acted opportunistically throughout his career, and used racist and homophobic language against those who couldn't fight back. For many, Hogan is the hero of their childhood, but outside the ring, he could sometimes appear as the villain.